Good evening, class. I hope we are all dry. As usual, it will be customary for us to give an extra 5 minutes to allow for the other students to log in. So we will start at 5:36. All right, that's 4 minutes from now. All righty.
Okay, no problem.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay. I'm just going to do a quick registry just to make sure we are all online and listening. All right. All right. So do we have Leon online? Leon, are you there? Do we have Karine?
Yes, present.
All right. We have Tyrese. Is Tyrese there? No, no Leon, no Tyrese. We have Ladine. If I pronounce it
Present,
correctly.
sir.
Okay.
Sir.
All right. Tenley. Tenley.
Present, sir.
Rohan.
Here, sir.
Kevin. Alicia. Sean. All right. So we have,
Here.
yes. All right. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Not much persons in class. Jermaine. Didn't call Jermaine.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, all right. Anne-Marie. Is Anne-Marie in class? Anne-Marie not there. All right. Good evening again. All right. So our last stop was we were at we had installed the power supply unit. We had installed the CPU into the motherboard. We had installed the memory into the motherboard, and we also installed the motherboard into the case. All right, and we do it in that order for ease of installation. All right, and we discuss a couple of things in selection when we are buying items. What are some of the things that we would need to purchase when we are doing particular upgrade? We talk about what goes with what and so forth. And we discuss that if you're upgrading a computer, chances are you need to buy, and you're buying a motherboard, chances are you will need to replace the CPU and also the memory, and sometimes the power supply. All right. And we speak of the heatsink, the usage. We talk about when we are installing the CPU, it is imperative, it is absolutely critical that we have the thermal paste, and it must be applied, and because it holds onto the CPU onto the heatsink efficiently and prevent heat loss, or let me say, it helps, or it effectively causes heat dissipation from the CPU onto the heatsink, and then it is blown out of the computer. So in essence, it helps with the efficiently cooling of the CPU. All right. So today we are going to continue with our installation process. All right. We are building, we are assembling our computer. And so seeing that we have installed the power supply, the motherboard, memory, CPU, heatsink, and fan, now we are going to move on to installing our storage medias. We're going to talk about our hard drives. All right. So, as it is on screen, you position the hard drive so it aligns with the hard drive bay opening. And the hard drive bay, that is standard in every computers, in every case. All right. And then you have the power interface. You have two cables that must be connected to the hard drive. You have the power cable and you have the data cable. All right. Can anybody reminds me which one of them is the we're talking about power, and we talk about the SATA cable, which is we're gonna have to remember, but I'm gonna leave it. You have the SATA cable, which also carries data. So you have the SATA power cable, and we have the SATA data cable, which those two cables are needed before your hard drive will work. All right. You insert the hard drive into the drive bay so that the screw holes in the drive line up with the screw in the case. All right. So the screw, as I said, these things are standard. So the drive bay would have been built with the screw in the correct location so that it will fit the hard drive. All right. So they are standard. And then step 3, we secure the hard drive into the case using the proper screws. All right. So that's how we install the hard drive. And we do basically the same with the optical drive. We're going to do the video installation, video demonstration, but let us talk about the optical drive just now. So the optical drive steps are, from the front of the case, because it's a bit different. From the front of the case, you choose the drive bay that you would want to hold the drive. You want to put the drive in. And the reason you are doing it from the front is that you're going to have to slide the optical drive or the CD-ROM drive into the case from the front so that it fits and slots into that opening that is there for it. Okay. All right. Insert the optical drive bay into the drive bay, and then you screw it into or screw it in place. And again, as I said, these screw holes are standard. So you'll find that the screws will fit into the space or the area that is made for it. All right. So we have the size of the optical drive is also standard, and it is 5 1/4 inch in width. All right. And our hard drive is 3 1/2 inches in width. All right, so let us now look at, let me find it, get to our video for hard drive installation and also for the optical drive installation. All right, give me a moment. All right, share. Can you hear? Can you hear, class?
No audio is there.
No audio?
No.
Okay, just a moment. Just a moment.
Lever as we close it. Now the 2.5 inch drive is in a 3.5 inch adapter.
Mute. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen, class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, so
Yeah.
we have gone through the steps and we are going to do the installation now. All right, take note.
Hello everyone. In this video, we get to install some drives. We're going to
Can you
focus
hear it, or
specifically
is
on a
it too
hard
low?
disk drive and an optical disk drive. Now first,
Okay.
we have the hard drive.
Can you hear it?
Now this is an adapter. It's not
Yeah,
actually a
it's fine.
full hard drive. It's a 3.5-inch hard drive adapter. And the reason this is important is because people commonly like to purchase these type of drives. These are solid states. They come in a 2.5-inch
I'm gonna
side, which is meant
restart
for a
start the
laptop.
video from the beginning, all right? So that get a better hearing.
Hello everyone. In this video, we get to install some drives. We're going to focus specifically on a hard disk drive and an optical disk drive. Now first, we have the hard drive. Now this is an adapter. It's not actually a full hard drive. It's a 3.5-inch hard drive adapter. And the reason this is important is because people commonly like to purchase these type of drives. These are solid states. They come in a 2.5-inch side, which is meant for a laptop. With adapters like this, we can easily take a solid state hard drive, drop it into position, and close the lever. As we close it, now the 2.5-inch drive is in a 3.5-inch adapter. With this being done, we could easily just slide this into our computer case and do the install of our screws. Now for my computer case, it accepts both 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch drives, so I don't need to require an adapter for my case.
All right, so the adapter, as he explained, is, wow, what did I do?
Hello everyone. Here we get to install front panel connectors.
Oh, I
This
see.
is going to include audio
What the adapter does, class, is that small hard drive is a SSD, and that's the same size that comes in the laptop. All right. So if you have a 2.5-inch width hard drive, which is a laptop drive, you can also install that hard drive into a desktop. However, you need an adapter or a 3.5 adapter or an enclosure to install it into the case. I must say, not all case comes like that. Some case will come with a bracket for a 2.5 drive, and you can install it there. Because now in the advent of SSDs, and SSDs are 2.5, you will find that the modern case, the newer cases come with that location, that bracket, for you to install it 2.5. But if you have a case that doesn't have, and you have that adapter, that's why it is in this video. That's the use. That's what the use is.
Hello everyone. In this video, we get to install some drives. We're going to focus specifically on a hard disk drive and an adapter. It's not actually a full hard drive. It's a 3.5-inch hard drive adapter. And the reason this is important is because people commonly like to purchase these type of drives. These are solid states. They come in a 2.5-inch side, which is meant for a laptop. With adapters like this, we can easily take a solid state hard drive, drop it into position, and close the lever. As we close it, now the 2.5-inch drive is in a 3.5-inch adapter. With this being done, we can easily just slide this into our computer case and do the install of our screws. Now for my computer case, it accepts both 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch drives, so I don't need to require an adapter for my case. But at this point in time, we can take our 2.5-inch solid state drive and we can install it into our case. When I line it up with the two screws, which we'll be able to see there's many different screw holes on the side of these, we need to align it up perfectly with a set of the holes. Now for me, my 2.5-inch hard drive fits beautifully right here. And then I can do my second screw. And now my 2.5-inch solid state hard drive is installed. After this, we want to install the optical disk drive. First, we need to make sure our front panel of our case has been removed. The front panel of the case right here. And this is the slot where we're going to install our optical disk drive. Now the first thing we need to do is remove this front panel because it's in the way for us to actually be able to access the optical disk drive. Here we have these levers that we can actually pull out. In every case will be a little bit different. We'll have some type of snaps or levers, and I can remove that front panel. Now with it removed, if I put it on its back again, take a look at that. We have this bay here where we can slide in our optical disk drive. Now, as you slide the optical disk drive in, please make sure it's facing the correct orientation. That is extremely important. We'd hate to have to turn the tower upside down every time we want to use the drive. Now with my case, the drive locks in using a lever mechanism as I slid it in. As you saw previously with the power supply, this will hold it in place, so we can then just place our screws to lock it in, which we'll do now. Awesome. Next, we'll continue on with installing adapter cards to provide our computer tower with even more functionality.
Okay, class. All right, so that's it for installation of the hard drive and also installation of your optical drive. All right, I'm going to reshare my PowerPoint screen. So who can remind me of the items that we have installed in the computer so far? Come on, guys, don't let me call any names.
We've installed the RAM.
Motherboard.
The motherboard, um,
The CPU.
Uh-huh.
Heatsink.
Heatsink, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Power supply.
hard drive,
Yep.
CD-ROM
that's
drive.
pretty CD-ROM drive. That's pretty much it. So we did the power supply unit, then we install the CPU onto the motherboard. We install the heatsink and fan. Then we install the memory, install the motherboard into the case. Then we install the hard drive and we install the optical drive. Okay, so selection of hard drive. All right, so we have hard drive that can be put internal and external. As a matter of fact, you can use all hard drive external. But it depends on where you're going to use it. All right, so you can decide what kind of hard drive am I going to be using for storage. Is it if I want speed, like speed for my operating system? I want my operating system to be very fast, boot up quickly and no delay. So we say, all right, we're going to use SSD because it is very fast. And SSD means solid state drive. Or we can use SSHD, which is a little bit slower than SSD, but it's faster than HDD. Or we can use our hard disk. All right. We have them in different with different features. We have hot swappable drive. Can anybody tell me what do I mean when the hard drive is hot swappable?
Meaning
It's not
you can take it out the computer without turning it off.
all right. That's correct. So you can replace it. You can take it out and put it back in while the computer is still on and operating. And you can also replace that hard drive with a different hard drive while the computer is operating. That's why it's called hot swappable, meaning that while everything is still running hot, you can make the change, you can swap it. All right, and heat generation, noise generation, power requirements. So you have hard drive that generate more heat and more noise, and some generate less heat and less noise. So it depends on where the computer is going to be. What depends if you want to have less heat. You don't want the hard drive to be generating heat when the computer is already in a heated environment or hot environment with minimal cooling. And noise generation also, you know, some hard drive when it is spinning, it make a whole lot of noise. And it could be that it is in a location where you don't need to hear that noise. So you want to find a hard drive that's less noisy. And the power requirements also is less, or based on what you want. So that's how you select your hard drive. All right, and optical drive, there are different reasons for selecting optical drive and based on the capabilities. So CD-ROM is a thing of the past in my head. I don't think anybody's still using CD-ROM, or I might be mistaken. You might have persons still using it. You can have a CD-ROM, a CD drive, which is a writable or rewritable. So it's a CD-R. Back in the days, that's what the guys, they call them the burners. They used to burn movies on them and sell them on the street, or music. So you have the CD-ROM. That was before they could afford a DVD-ROM, the CD-RW, I'm sorry, before they afforded DVD-RW. Then you have the DVD-ROM, which play DVDs, but it does not write. And it says read only memory, right? Then you have the DVD-R, which is a rewritable drive. That means you can burn rewritable disc, DVD disc into that drive. All right. And then people start to burn movies. That is very popular now because persons are burning movies and selling them on the streets and whatever. Music videos, wedding videos, all those stuff now are being burned on DVDs. So the DVD-RW drive is very popular back then and still is today. You have the Blu-ray disc, read only, that you used to play music or to play videos, movies only. You have the one that is writable. You write on a writable disk, and then you have the writable or that can edit also, and you can rewrite or edit on a rewritable disk, Blu-ray disk. All right, so that's how you would select it based on the usage and you know the features of each drive. All right. You'll find that a lot of computers now don't really come with the option of a optical drive. You'd have to buy it. That is what you call now an optional component, optional hardware on a computer now, because some persons don't want it. So you find they can use the thumb drive, the flash drives, you know, because flash drives are come with large sizes now, like up to 256 gig, 500 gig, and so forth. So no one want to use a DVD or a Blu-ray, which is not much compared to a flash drive. So it's as I say, it's not really a thing of the past, but it's optional. So the person would have to require the usage of an optical drive before they buy it. So these are the drive bay width. All right. You have 5.25, which is most time for the optical drives. We have 3.5, which is for hard drive, HDDs, and SSHDs. And then you have the 2.5, which is for hard drive also, which is the laptop hard drive or SSDs. All right, and they are very popular, very, very popular. All right, we look at installing the optical drive already. Now we are going to install adapter cards. Can two persons, two different persons. I need two different adapter cards that we would want to install in our computer. And two persons answer, give me a card each.
It should be able to install an additional video card.
Video adapter card, that's correct. Someone else, give me a different adapter card. Come on, guys.
Sound cards.
Sound cards, correct. You can also install a sound card. Remember, guys, all of these things, all of these components may have been integrated on the motherboard, but it might not be able to give you the result that you are looking for, which means that you would have to go buy one on the market. So the video card that comes with the motherboard might not be able to give you the proper resolution because you're a gamer, you want to play games, or you are a video graphic designer or artist. So you want to see colors in real. So you need high resolution. So the one that comes with integrated on the motherboard will probably not give you that. So you'll have to buy a proper video or a graphics adapter card. You understand what I'm saying? And you will do the same for sound cards. So take, for instance, a person who have a student play music through their computer. You probably will have a different sound card with more inputs or different kind of inputs in comparison to what come on the motherboard. All right, so not because it is on the motherboard mean you don't need it. People will always want more than what is there and they will buy it. Okay, so installing your adapter card, the first step is to find an empty PCI Express 16 slot. So when I talk about 16, we're going to get there. The 16 does mean lanes. All right, it means lanes. We will explain that as we move into the course. All right. On the case, and remove the small metal cover at the back, which we call, well, I call it the backing plane. Some persons call it the covering, metal cover at the back there. All right, you remove that. Then you align the video adapter to the appropriate expansion slot on the motherboard. Step 3, you're going to press it down gently and you're going to press it until it's fully seated or you hear a click. Okay, secure the video adapter card mounting. I'm sorry, it is called a mounting bracket at the back also. Video adapter card mounting bracket to the case with the appropriate screw. All right. So we are going to look at that video in a moment. All right, but let us go through this here quickly and then we'll just go back and look at the video. So when you're selecting adapter cards for your computer, like I explained earlier, it will be for different reasons you need them. But you will select the card based on your motherboard or the speed, input, output, or data rate. So you have adapter cards that are designed for a specific task and add extra functionality to your computer. There are a variety of adapter cards. And they are the graphics card, the sound card, storage controller, I/O cards, which is input output. You have the NIC, network interface card, and you have the video capture card. All right. And these cards are inserted into two types of expansion slot on the motherboard. They have the PCI, which is the short name for peripheral component interconnect. And you have the PCIe, which is the PCI Express. So it will be the peripheral component interconnect express. All right. And the PCIe has 4 types of slots. And this is what we're going to talk about moving into the chapter. All right. You have the X1, which is times 1. You have the times 4, times 8, and times 16 slot. All right. And if you look at the picture here, you will see them. So the beginning, if you can see my mouse moving here, can I see my mouse at the top of the screen, the top picture, top right-hand picture? Can I see my mouse moving?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Sure.
so you can see 1, 2, this little slot right here. That is a PCI. That is a PCI slot. All right, PCI, peripheral interconnect. And you have these also. Remember, I tell you that sometimes in the older time they would have been, sometimes they are white, like this one here. All right, then you have the PCIe with 1 lane, 1 slot. It's a small one right here. Right there, there it is. That's the middle picture. Then you have PCIe with 16 lanes. If you look at it, it's longer. All right, 16 lanes. All right, we're going to talk about the lanes as we move further into the chapter. All right, so let us look at how we install our adapter card. So just give me a moment. Give me a second, class. Ensuring that I have this video. I know I have it. Okay, just a moment. I guess it's in the next folder. Okay, so class, I can't find my video. All right. Still, I'm not finding my video. No, I have it. Okay, we will probably need to look at the video in the chapter. All right, just give me a second. Let me get to just a moment. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry about the delay. Thought I had my video there. We get there. All right. So we're gonna listen to this video. All right. So get yourself ready. Share. Here we go. All right, optimized already. And let's go. Give you a bigger screen and press play. All right, so I think I've gone through the steps already. So there you go.
Hello everyone. In this video we can do install adapter cards. So first what we want to do is take a look at our case. And we need to take a look at what adapter slots we have. Inside of my case, we can take a look at the motherboard and a closer up. We have a PCI Express 16. Then we have 3 PCI Express 1s. So what we want to do is be able to pick out adapter cards that are going to be compatible with these PCI Express slots. Also, if you're wondering what this is a mini PCI Express. Think of wireless cards that you'd be able to install in a desktop tower. So let's get started. Step 1, we're going to need to find an empty slot, which we have right here. So what we need to do is take off the corresponding cover that covers that slot. To remove this cover, which is covering the slot, I have to lift up my tower, and we'll take a look at what I need to do on the outside. This screw here is holding on to those adapter card slot covers. It keeps them in place. So I can go ahead and I can unscrew that with my special Torx screwdriver. With that screw out, we can actually take this cover. It just lifts off, and that exposes all the adapter card slot covers. At this time, I can actually take out this cover, and it just lifts off. I can remove it from the computer case. Now the adapter slot cover is exposed, and we're able to zoom back in and continue on. With that slot cover exposed, we can now install a PCI Express 16 card. I happen to have a PCI Express graphics card. It's a PCI Express 16, which we have here, which is the physical compatibility that matches that slot. Step 2, I'm going to align the video card into the appropriate slot in the motherboard, which will be right there. For step 3, we need to press down gently on this card to install it into place. Step 4, we need to reinstall that slot cover. I will put my slot cover back on, and we will take our screw on our screwdriver, and we'll screw it back into place. Thank you for watching. Our adapter card is now installed.
All right. Do we understand? It may look a little difficult, but it is really not difficult. It is simple. It's like ABC as soon as you get used to it. All right. Okay, so any questions regarding installing the adapter card? Any questions?
No, sir.
All right. Seeing everybody is not answering, I'm going to take it that we are okay. We don't have any questions. All right. The factors, the other factors that we look at when we are selecting adapter cards for installation, you know. So we looked at some of them, the lanes and the different types, the usage. All right, and then on the previous slide. So these are some pictures of what the cards look like. So you can see the graphic adapter card, which is right here, second card. And we have the sound card. We have the storage controller card. The storage controller card is that card that they use to create a virtual drive, meaning you have multiple disks combining to make one virtual drive. You call it a RAID. We will go through that in chapters ahead. And then we have the I/O card where you can get multiple USB ports. We have the network interface card to connect you to your network. And you have the video capture card. All right, before purchasing an adapter card, you consider the following questions. Where are the user's current and future needs? Always important. Future needs are what you consider to be scalability. When you're thinking of anything, you think of scalability, meaning you should be able to use it in the future and you should be able to add more than what is required to it. And that's when you say something is scalable. All right, so you can expand on the usage. All right, so is there an open or compatible expansion slot available? like I told you on motherboard, told you in the previous class that motherboard comes with multiple expansion slots. But the more affordable, I don't want to use the word cheaper, the more affordable motherboards most times comes with one expansion slot. So will you be able to buy 2 adapter cards to fit in 1 expansion slot just like that? Could you, class? Hello?
No,
What if
sir.
my mic is on mute? Because I'm not hearing any response. Let me check my mic. I know it's not on mute. All right. What I'm saying is you can't, but you could buy a thing they call a riser card. A riser card will give you additional ports or additional expansion slots. You put that in at one slot and then you add the next adapter cards in that expansion slot. But it's totally most time it's not so feasible or lookable for that. So you have to be careful when you're buying. Know how many expansion slots you're gonna need before you buy the motherboard. As I said, you need to be scalable. You need to think scalable. Future and current need. Current needs and future needs. All right? All right, so we have gone through installing adapter cards. All right? So one I think, we've gone through this already. All right, so these are labs that you guys probably will not be able to do, but I want you to go on YouTube, look on videos, how to install a network card, that was the NIC, how to install your sound card, how to install your video card, all right? Because when we install those into the computer, the physical installation is different from the software installation. And remember that we have a software that runs the hardware component of our computer, and that software is called what? Can you remember? The software that runs the hardware component of our computer. Can somebody remind me?
System.
It's called what?
Operating system.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
The operating system.
Oh, the operating system, let me tell you, the operating system interacts with the user and the hardware component of the computer. But there's a software that interacts with the OS and the hardware. When we talk about it, when we talk about the printer, it starts with D. That's what we call it.
The D.
It starts with D. It's called the driver.
Driver software.
Right, the driver software. So remember the driver software, it interacts with the hardware component of the computer and the operating system. All right. All right. So when we're talking about additional storage, it can be different. We have the SD card. So for those who normally use SD card and don't know what it means, it's secure digital. You have the micro SD, that's a small one, very small one. The one that you put in the phone, and then you have a very smaller one, small one, comes in the newer phones. That's a mini SD. And we have compact flash, and we have memory stick. Memory stick is what we call what? Can anybody give me the next name for memory stick?
Flash drive.
Flash drive, right. All right, so we'll choose, if we're gonna talk about a media reader like the one we see in the picture here. You understand? So for instance, you have a computer store downtown, you're selling people to come and carry them pictures, and they want media, or they want medium, carry documents to be printed. It's good to have one of these media readers because people will come with different things and you want to be ready because you don't want to miss a sale. All right, so it would be good to have something like that. All right, external storage. USB flash drives, sometimes called thumb drives, are commonly used as removable external storage. External storage devices connect to an external port, whether it's USB or eSATA or the Thunderbolt ports. All right. So you choose the correct type of external storage for your customer. Always remember, always think of your customers' needs, and it's going to be current and future. A good technician always plans scalability. All right. For example, if your customer needs to transfer a small amount of data, such as a single presentation, an external flash drive is a good choice. And if the computer needs to back up or to transfer a large amount of data, then you know you will select an external hard drive. All right. So that is how you think. That is how you plan as a computer technician, by thinking of your customers' needs. All right. Current and future. All right. So we have video demonstration to connect the internal power cables. We're going to move to that video. All right, so the things that the power cables are, we're talking about what is the cable that comes onto the power supply unit. And then you need to, for it to power the motherboard, you have to plug those cables onto the motherboard so that you can power the components of the motherboard. Because if you don't plug those components onto the motherboard, what will happen, class? Tell me what will happen.
You don't have no power.
You won't have no power. Of course, power is going to be there, but it's going to be in the power supply.
Yes. But we wouldn't have any to the motherboard on him. So.
Right, we wouldn't have any power to the motherboard. The computer can't start up because you're not powering up the hard drive, you're not powering up the CPU, the motherboard not powering up. Nothing going to happen. Just the power supply alone will come on and nothing else. All right. So now we're going to look at how we connect those internal power cable. Do we have an external power cable?
Yes, sir.
Good. What is the use of the external power cable?
To supply power to the power supply from the wall
Definitely.
outlet.
Definitely. You know, that's a trick question, all right? But that's correct. All right. So first, align the 24-pin ATX power connector to the socket on the motherboard. Gently press it down until you hear it clicks. Align the 4-pin auxiliary power connector to the socket that is on the motherboard, and press on it until you hear it go click. All right. You're going to align the CPU fan power connector to the socket on the motherboard for the CPU connector. And you just put it down. You don't have to hear no really click most time, but you press it down. And if you have any other components that needs power, like the auxiliary, like the chassis fans, the cooling fans, then you also plug them onto the motherboard. Now you need to do all of these things plug onto the motherboard before you apply power to your motherboard. You understand me, class? You must do all of these before you apply power to your motherboard. So you ensure everything is connected that you need to be connecting. All right. And then we're going to look at how we're going to plug on the power cable for the hard drive and also the data cable for the hard drive. All right. So let us look at this right now. We're in the space where it says lab. All right. Just give me a second. We're going to go into this video. We have to use videos, class, because we are not face-to-face, and as such, this is how we have to do it. But you will get a good feeling of what it is like. Okay? Share this content. Ensure it's optimized and sound is on. Let's go. There we go. Can you see the screen? Can you see this, class?
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. You have to answer me. I have to know that you are there in class, and I have to know that you are getting what I'm saying. I want to know that you are understanding, and I also crave questions. If you ask questions, I feel that you guys are participating, you're paying attention, and so forth. Let's do this.
Hello everyone, this is our Install the Power Connector video. This is going to be a two-part video. The first part, we're going to install the power connector to the motherboard. Step 1, we need to align our 24-pin connector with the socket on the motherboard. There's our socket, and here's our 24-pin connector. With step 1, aligning it means we need this clip to connect on the outside of that connector. So we can go ahead and we can align it with that connector. Now that it's aligned, step 2, we're going to gently press down on the connector until that clip locks into place. As we press down, you hear it click into place. Step 3, we need to align our 4-pin power connector for auxiliary power on the motherboard, which we'll see here also has a clip, with its corresponding connector on the motherboard. To align it, I'll just drop it in on top. And then, step 4, we're going to gently press down on that connector until it clicks into place. And now it clicked into place. Step 5, we need to take our CPU fan with its power connector right here. And we need to align this correctly, which you'll see a little slot here. You align that correctly with the actual CPU fan slot on the motherboard, which is right here. Step 6, we're going to gently press down on it and put it in place. It doesn't click, it just slides in, and we are done. In part 2 of our video, we're going to install the power connector for our SATA hard drive. Now, this is our 2.5-inch solid-state hard drive. On the back, we're going to have a data port and a power port. So we can take a zoom in here and see a closer view. The larger port here is going to be the power connector, and this is going to be our 15-pin SATA power connector. So step 1, we're going to take our power connector that's going to attach to the drive, and here's what it looks like right here. We can see it's keyed in a specific way, so you cannot install it upside down. And we need to align it correctly with the SATA hard drive. When we have it aligned correctly, we can take it and line it up right here. And step 2 is we're going to gently push it in until it's fully seated. Awesome. Now that we have the SATA 15-pin power connector installed, we're going to install the power connector for our case fan. This is going to be a 3-pin power connector that we'll connect to on the motherboard. The power connector looks exactly like this. It's got a spot for 3 pins. The connector on the motherboard that we're going to hook it to is right below here, and it is brown. We'll zoom in and take a closer look at that power connector. So as you see right here, that's going to be the 3-pin power connector, and we're going to connect it in. Step 1, we need to align the power connector to the motherboard. Again, this power connector has a slot, just like we saw previously for the CPU fan. So step 2, we're going to press it in gently now that we have it aligned. And that is what it looks like when it is installed correctly. Thank you for watching our Installing the Power Connectors video.
All right, class, do you notice that this guy is prepared and he's wearing his wristband? And he's also working on a static, anti-static mat. Okay, so do we think we could go through these steps when we meet face to face? One of the things that you guys could do, you know, I say it proudly, that if you write down the steps and look at the videos and write down the steps, you will remember exactly, because these things, they really don't change, you know. You look at them, you will tend to identify the components, the parts, as you get into this career. It's easy, all right? So we're going to install front panels. We're going to install front panels, and we're going to watch that video also. We're going to watch that video. So we are doing the full installation of the computer today. All right, so first step, before, let me tell you what the front panel cables are. So on the computer, guys, you know that you have the power button, you have the reset button, you have the power LED, you have the hard drive LED, and you might have, which other LED? Maybe some other LED. You have the speaker cable that is connected to the speaker. You have the USB, the internal USB cable that connects to the, or even the external USB cable when it connects to the front panel, because you know, computer nowadays come with USB port at the front. And so you have USB ports at the back of the computer that is integrated with your motherboard, but the ones at the front, they are connected to the motherboard using a cable. All right. And you have the, as I said, the power LED, the power switch, you understand, the reset switch, and so forth. All right. So those we are going to look at the video now and decide how we are going to install them, demonstrate how we're going to install them. Just give me a second, guys. I'm bringing it up. Optimize and unmute. There we go. All right. Can you see the screen, class?
Yes,
All right.
sir.
Yes. Remember, guys, you have to answer me so I know that we are here.
Hello everyone. Here we get to install front panel connectors. This is going to include audio connectors, as well as power switch, reset switch, hard drive activity lights. So to get started, we're going to use a different board, just because the other board was more proprietary for a specific vendor. This will be better. To start it off, what we're going to see here is that down the left corner, we'll zoom in on this in a little bit, we're going to have our front panel audio. And down in the bottom right corner, we're going to have our front panel connectors. So first we're going to take a look at the front panel audio. So we have a zoomed in view of the front panel pins for our audio connector. And what you can see here is that we have 9 pins. It looks like one of them is missing, but it's not missing. That's just because it's a keyed slot. If we take a look at the actual connector that's coming off of the front panel that we're going to plug in, it's this. This is an HD audio connector. And the HD audio connector, if we take a look at the actual holes, look at that. It's got that same keyed format where we've got that one that's going to be missing. And you know,
Class, HD there doesn't stand for hard drive. All right. HD there stands for high definition. All right.
orientation.
Okay.
So all we need to do is slide this back onto those pins and we'll have this up and running. So we've got our audio connector connected to our motherboard, and now we're going to move over to the front panel. So let's take a closer look at the front panel connectors on the motherboard. Here they are at the bottom right corner. What we'll see here is power LED, as well as hard drive LED, power switch, speaker, which is not your normal speaker, that's your errors and think BIOS and boot up issues, and a reset switch. What we need to do is take these connectors that are coming off of the front panel of our tower, and we need to hook them accordingly. Well, how do you know what goes where and what orientation? That's where you consult your manual. Bing, my manual is here. So you can see my diagram for how I need to connect these, and that's what we're going to do next. So what we'll do first is we're going to take the power LEDs, and that's going to be these two right here. And we'll take these power LEDs and we'll put them in the correct orientation. According to our picture, the positive one is going to go on the left to this pin, and the negative one will go here on the next pin over on the right. So I'll do that. And what you'll notice is there is a gap between those two, and that's okay. That's a blank slot. Again, it's keyed. Next, what we want to do is go ahead and do the power switch. That power switch is hiding underneath here. There we go. This is the power switch. And the power switch is going to go right here where you see the power switch one, PWR SW. Same thing for this. We don't have to worry about a positive and negative. We just need to drop this thing on that power switch. Power switch is installed. Next, we're going to do the reset. So we'll find the reset switch, which is this one right here. And reset needs to go on these two, as it shows in our diagram. The reset switch is now installed. And lastly, we're going to set up and do the hard drive LED. Hard drive LED, according to our diagram, is the bottom left corner. And our front panel connectors are now installed. So it's all installed. That's awesome. If we had any USB connectors, we'd pop them in and plug them straight into these keyed USB ports, and we'd be fine for those as well. My system does not have those for this motherboard and this case that I'm utilizing, so we don't have to drop those in. Now, take care and practice putting these connectors on, and make sure you take the time to find the manual so you know how to do it properly. You're one step closer to being an IT professional and doing one of the hardest parts of hooking up a motherboard inside of a computer case.
All right, class, that is one of the integral part also when you are setting up your computer, is to ensure you get those connectors connected properly. I can tell you, I have learned the hard way many years ago. The thing is that they weren't even looking so civilized back in the days, you know, but I've learned the hard way, and I understand how important it is to ensure that you have all those pins connected properly. All right. So with practice, we will get better and better and better. All right. So you guys don't worry about it. If you have not done it before, time will come. You will just don't even think about it when you are doing it. All right. So we will continue. We will continue on our PowerPoint slide. All right. Remember we are on chapter 2. We're on chapter 2, and we have to finish and begin chapter 3 today, and you'll be doing exam this weekend. All right. Before we go any further, by the way, any questions, class? Is there any questions? Any questions at all?
Sure. Those cables, are they always labeled like it has like the names on them?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
okay.
They're always labeled.
Okay.
Always labeled. The thing though, they on the motherboard, the pins, like here on the motherboard, might not be labeled that brightly that you can see it, because right now as it is, this motherboard has been magnified so you can see it clearly. So you would need a light, and if you're not sure, just like the demonstrator in the video said, get your manual. Normally when I get to the PowerPoint, to the panel, the front panel cables, I get my manual immediately. Even though I'm going to look at what is on the board, but I get my manual and put it right there. All right, and then I work with it. So you don't want to make any mistakes. All right. Okay. If you look on the screen, you notice a P-LED. P-LED, there are two of them. One's a positive and one's a negative. They are both power LEDs, but the two of them work as in one. So they must be connected properly, else it won't work any at all. All right. So you see, if you look on the motherboard here, you see PWR LED. You notice you only have plus here, which is the power, the positive side. And you have minus here, which is the negative side. All right. So you have power LED. Power LED, you put the positive on these two, and then you put the minus on this one. Okay? Can't go wrong once you follow. All right? Can't go wrong.
So all the positives, they basically have 2 pins or
No,
so
no,
it's
no. From
okay.
motherboard to motherboard.
Okay.
All right? Okay, so there you go. Demonstration of the cables is the same. All right, pin 1. It shows the pin 1. All right, so let us look. System panel connectors include the power button, the reset button, the power and drive activity LEDs, the system speaker and audio panel cable. Those panel connectors are not keyed. All right, so you'd have to use the manual or you look on the motherboard to know where to put each one of them because they are not keyed. However, each front panel cable usually has a small arrow indicating pin 1. All right, and each pair of LED pins on the motherboard system panel connector has pin 1 mark with a plus sign. All right, so once you see it there, pin 1 mark with a plus sign. Okay, there it is. New cases on motherboards have USB 3.0 and USB 3.1 capabilities. Those are the faster versions of USB. All right, USB connector cables are often 9 or 10 pins arranged in 2 rows. All right, so if you look on it this here, see it here, you have USB and you have USB. All right, so if you look on it, it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 pins on this one here, and it's 2 rows. All right, 2 rows. And if you look on this one, it's the same number of pins, 9 pins, 2 rows. All right, motherboard connectors. This arrangement allows for 2 USB connections, so USB connectors are often in pairs. Sometimes 2 connectors are together in one piece and can be connected to the entire USB motherboard connector. So you can have this all together in one. All right, so you end up with you call it a 18 pin, and you connect one connector inside of it. All right, so I've seen those motherboards. All right, so the power button, align pin 1 of 2 pin to the front panel, and this is all we'll just go over this here. All right, and we align each one of these connectors, pin 1 with pin 1 and pin 2 with pin 2. All right. All right, so we complete the computer assembly now. So we have connected the connectors, which is the last thing we do. And now we are going to be closing up the case and plugging in everything, connect up the monitor and the keyboard, put in the power cable and so forth. And screw up the case and we're going to clasp our hands and close our eyes and we're going to pray and that everything will work fine. Okay, class? All right, so this video will demonstrate how we're going to do it. Step 1, reattach the front panel. That is the piece that you take off to put in the CD-ROM, the optical drive. Plug in the power cable into the power supply, not into the wall as yet, just into the power supply. Orient and connect USB cables to the USB ports. They're talking about the one for the keyboard and mouse. Orient and connect video cable to the video port and the video adapter. We're talking about one for the monitor at the back. Tighten the video cable screws to the video adapter. So we have that 2 pins, those 2 screws on the end of the video cable. We're going to screw them into the pin that are there, and those are keyed. You can't make a mistake with the video cable. They are color keyed. So the video cable is always blue. Okay? The sound card is always yellow. Don't forget that. All right. So tighten the video cable screws to the video adapter 6. Connect the network cable to the Ethernet port. All right, that's the RJ45 port. You connect your network cable there. Connect the audio cables to the audio ports for those who have speakers that they are connecting to the computer. Place the side panel cover onto the case and slide it closed. Then you tighten the screws and screw it up. All right, the next step is to plug the power cable into the power outlet, turn it on the computer, and then turn on the monitor, and voila, everything should work just fine. All right, so we're going to look at the computer assembly picture now, just to make sure that we see that we have completed our task the way it should be done. So when we get into class to do our face-to-face labs, we have an idea what we need to do. All right, so let us look at it right now. Get this video up. Here we go, and let us start. Pause. Just a second. Share. And go to here, optimize and video. All right, there we go. All right. Can I see the screen, class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. All right, guys, you have to participate, all right?
Hello everyone. In this video we're going to reassemble our case and then we're going to install our external cables. To get started we have the front of our tower here and we'll put on our front cover. Now remember the front cover just had these locking clips on the side, so we just need to line it up and all we need to do is push down in the corners. And now the front case is locked. We've got our USB ports, our headphone, and our mic port. Also in the front here we also have our DVD disk drive that we installed. I can turn this on its face. And now we can do our external cables. So for this part I'll take off my anti-static wrist strap. And I can take my power cord.
And guys, if you remember, Tolo is also working on an anti-static mat. So if you look right there, you notice the anti-static mat is right there. All right, those are tools that we must have in our toolkit, or I would say our repair arsenal kit. We must not go without them, all right?
And I can just slide the plug in here. And you shouldn't have to force any one of these cables as you install the cables to the back of your tower. I've got a USB for my keyboard. These you do have to align, so take a close look regarding how you need to align it. You'll see the correct end to slide in. Then I have another USB, so this is my keyboard mouse combo. And again, we'll take a look at the alignment of the USB and plug it in. Also at this time, I have my graphics cable. For me, I have a DVI connection. The DVI is going to go to my white port here on my graphics card we had installed. So I'll plug that in. And we've got 2 screws on that. We can just...
So, you know, I want to make mention that he's not using the onboard video adapter. He installed his own video adapter or adapter card inside onto the motherboard and into one of the expansion slot. All right. So, and that video adapter card does not use a VGA port. It is using a DVI, digital video interface port, right? And if you look at this beside it, it has 2 HDMI ports also.
easily screw it until it's snug. You don't need to over tighten these. It's not going to fall out. Lastly, I have an audio cable and I have my network jack. I'll plug in my network jack to my Ethernet port. Then my audio cable is green for my speakers out, and I'll plug that in my green speaker out port. Our external cables are installed. Last thing, we take a look at the side. It's still open. We need to close it up with the cover. With the cover, it's just going to slide on. You can see the slots here along the top that we're going to lock it into. Just going to rest it in. You can shift it and feel it to slide into place. And then there should be no force really needed here. Just slowly slide it forward. Then I have my locking screw. But I can just close that by hand. And then I can give it a little bit of a snug tighten. And again, we don't need to over tighten that. And now we're done. Our case is put back together. It is ready to go. Thank you for watching our video.
Okay, class. Do you think you guys are comfortable by watching these videos? Do you think you can attempt to do assembling of a computer by yourself?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Cool. That's what I like. I love to hear the confidence. All right, so remember at 7 p.m. we take, it's normal, it's a 15-minute break where you get to go and use the restroom, drink some water, drink a cup of tea, shake your legs, whatever it is. All right. But let us continue with our PowerPoint. All right, chapter 2.
Before you go, sir.
Chapter 2 is done, by the way. All right, so before the question, let me finish. Chapter 2 is done. We build the computer. We define, in building the computer, before we do that, we define the general and fire safety standards. We connect the power supply. We install the motherboard components, and those are the CPU, the heatsink and the fan, the memory. We install the internal drives, and those are the hard drives and the optical drives. We install the adapter cards. We talk about the video card, the network interface card. We talk about additional storage if we need it. All right, and we connect the computer components with the appropriate cables. We talk about the power supply cables that we use to power up the motherboard. We ensure those connectors are connected appropriately. And after that, we connect the front panel cables to ensure that the computer will power up, the LEDs will work, speaker will work, the USB ports will work, and so forth and so on. Then what we did was to close up the computer, plug in the cable, attach our keyboard and mouse, our speaker, our monitor, all right? And what we did to power it on, and voila, the computer is up, all right? So we have been through that. Any questions while we wait until 7 p.m.? We have 5 minutes. Questions?
Yes, sir. The HD that was connected for the audio. That cable was supposed to go to the front, the audio jack, and the computer casing right there.
Or you mean the HD audio?
Yeah, the HD audio.
Okay, the HD audio on the front panel, you have some audio out and audio in ports. When he was covering it up, if you would see that, all right. And those ports are connected to the HD audio port on the motherboard.
Oh.
It's the same HD audio port that is on the back, but they also put it, so you know, like some persons may plug the speaker at the front and some plug it in at the back, or you know, you can have a surround setup where you have front and back speakers on your computer. Yeah. Right, so that's what it is. Any more questions? Come on, guys, open it up. Discussions. I know this evening so far must have been a little interesting and have a little excitement installing the computer. So let me hear the questions.
Sorry, one more question again.
Right.
How far in depth we're going to do like the repairs? Like we're going to go like probably, yeah, like component wise, apart from the regular component we would have installed, like probably the component that is in, soldered in the chip and the motherboard, I mean.
No, we're not doing that because this is not an IT technician course.
Okay.
This is IT essential. So
Okay.
what we're doing is what we're doing now is giving you introductory knowledge basically to the components, how they work, and you will know that one is not working. So you don't have to try and repair a component, you change a component. All right?
Okay.
Right. So basically, I mean, back in the days we'll repair a motherboard. We don't do those things anymore. Motherboard goes bad, we get rid of it and buy a next one. The time you spend to repair a motherboard, you're going to, you know, they're saying that time is money. You probably use up more time in more money within your time than to buy a motherboard. You understand? So, yep. Any more questions? At 7 o'clock, we take a break. 7:15, we return and we go into chapter 3. We're doing chapter 1 and 2 exam this weekend. Can you guys manage chapter 1 and 2 exam? You should be reading already.
It'd be like multiple choice or
Yes, it is multiple choice.
How many questions on each?
30 or less questions.
30 or less, okay.
Not more than 35 questions.
Not no but.
No. You just need to read, practice the quiz. We're going to do a couple of quiz too also. You have to do the assignments as I give you them. I'm going to give you some more assignments this evening. You will have those you need to submit them next week. So you're only submitting one assignment today, this weekend.
Oh, that's the first one, sir. What you saying?
Right. And then you're going to be doing the 2 exams over this weekend. So that's exam for chapter 1 and 2. Next week, you'll be getting assignment and you'll be doing chapter 3 exam. And if you complete chapter 4, we'll be doing chapter 4 exam also. All right. So what we'll do is move through these chapters that we can spend more time into the meat of the matter. All right.
Yes, sir.
I implore you guys, and I'm encouraging every one of you to read, do the quizzes, read through the chapter and do the quizzes. The quizzes are important. The questions do come back on the exams, all right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so when we come back, we'll start at chapter 3. So you guys have 15 minutes to stretch and relax, drink some water, whatever you drink, and get back with your mind fresh again. All right? See you in 15 minutes. Good evening again, class. We are back again. Is everyone in? Let me see who is talking. Anne-Marie Astin, good evening, sir. I'm not joining the class today. Okay. All right. No problem. Anne-Marie Astin. Is everyone back in class? Give us go a thumbs up, please. Let me see that you are here. Thumbs up. Good. Jermaine. Jermaine is here. Don't see anybody else give me any thumbs up. Okay. I guess Jermaine is the only person in class.
I'm here. Thanks.
Okay. Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie is here also. Good. Tenley, everybody. Thanks very much. Always give me a thumbs up. All right. So we're going to move on in this evening class. Anne-Marie, we missed the installations. I'm going to put the videos inside on the Moodle. If I can, I might create a tiny URL and send you guys a link also so that you can watch the link while you go through the slides. All right. Also, those videos that I have played this afternoon, those videos can be found on our Cisco NetAcad website, the platform. It has those videos. So if you go through chapter 2, all the chapters on NetAcad, you will see those same videos. All right. So let's move on now. We are going to do now advanced computer hardware. So the objectives of this section, we have the booting of the computer, and under that section we're going to learn to configure the BIOS, talk about UEFI, we call it UEFI. We describe the post, the BIOS, CMOS, UEFI. CMOS and UEFI interchangeable. One is the older version, one is the newer version. We configure the computer firmware, and we talk about electrical power, and we will also explain electrical power. We'll get some assignment, some research on electrical power. We'll describe wattages, explain the power fluctuation, and devices that protect against damage caused by fluctuation. So we'll go through that. All right, so we're getting there. We talk about the computer functionality in the advanced era. We explain the computer functionality, explain the CPU architecture. We talk about, I'll give you a preview when I talk about RAID earlier on. So we describe RAID and talk about it. Describe the common ports, cables, and connectors. We describe monitor and characteristics of the monitors. We upgrade computers, select the components to upgrade. We have a preview of it already. We speak about it in chapters 1 and 2. So we talk about it, we do some more advanced information. All right. We talk about protecting the environment, or we dispose of stuff that we don't need. All right. So let's move on. Boot the computer. All right, so every computer, as a matter of fact, every device that is a computing device, including your tablet, including the switches and the routers, including your phones, your laptops, you know, those computers that have a startup process, they go through a process we call a boot process. All right, so when a computer is booted, the basic input output system, that is the short word for that is the BIOS. All right, BIO, B for basic, I for input, O for output, S for system. All right, performs the hardware check on the main components of the computer. And that goes for, as I said, all of those devices, tablet, laptops, phones, your computers, all of those devices. All right, even your if you have a switch or wireless router, those stuff, even your TV go through a boot process. All right, if a device is malfunctioning, an error or a beep code alerts. Before I go there, for everything that is been booting up, there's a check, a process. It's a particular check that runs to check to make sure everything is happening. It's called a POST. All right, and POST is acronym for, or it's an abbreviation for power on self-test. All right, so that's what your POST is. So everything is gonna happen in an order. So you know your computer will start up, then it checks the CPU, then it checks the monitor, then it checks check the CPU, then the memory, then it checks the monitor, then it checks the keyboard and the mouse, and so forth and so on. And while it's doing all those checks, if it finds any of the components malfunctioning, it will beep a code, or will give multiple beeps, you know, as the appropriate beep is for whatever error that it discovers on its way booting up. All right, and this is a standard. All right, it's a standard across the computing industry. So if a device is malfunctioning, the error or a beep code alerts the technician of the problem. So once the technician identifies the beep, you know, each manufacturer will have different beeps or different sequence of beeps, but that will be, the technician will be able to get that in a manual, so they know if you're looking at a particular motherboard with a particular BIOS, you know, say for instance, American Megatrend, you know, AMI BIOS, then you look on the AMI BIOS error codes and it will tell you if you get 2 beeps, what it means. If you get 3 beeps or 2 long and 1 short, it will tell you what it means. Okay? So that's what the post is for. Motherboard manufacturers may use different beep codes. Always consult the motherboard documentation to get the beep codes for your computer. And an installation tip here to determine if post is working properly. This is what we always do as a technician back in the days, and it's still very relevant today. Remove all RAM modules from the computer and power it on, and the computer will emit a beep code for the computer with no RAM installed. All right, it will not harm the computer. Okay, so that is one way to check if your motherboard is working or your processor is working. If your motherboard and processor is working, you definitely will get a beep if you remove the RAM modules. So once you get those beep, don't say, boy, the motherboard not working or the processor not working. Both of them working. All right, the problem will be something else, but not the motherboard or the processor. Take it from Michael. All right. All motherboards, all right, let's go to BIOS and CMOS. All motherboards need a BIOS to operate. Yes. So in the chapter previous to this, I told you that the operating system of the computer, which is like Windows, the Mac OS, the Android, the Linux, those are operating system that interacts, interface with the user and the hardware of the computer. All right, so that's what the operating system does. It's an interface for the user and the hardware of the computer. Now you have a different operating system that is running in the lower end of the computer. All right, the lower end of the computer, it's called the BIOS, basic input system, you know, and all motherboards come with this and it operates it. What that does is it interfaces the hardware to all hardware components connected to the motherboard. All right. So any components connected to the motherboard, that operating system interface with it and also the operating system. All right. So listen with this now. The BIOS is a RAM chip on the motherboard. And due to the fact that it's a ROM RAM chip, you mean it's read only. All right, so you cannot add stuff to it, and it once the computer is turned off, loses power, that information will still be there. All right. The RAM chip on the motherboard that contains a small program that controls the communication between the operating system and the hardware. All right. Along with the post, BIOS also identify which drives are available, which drives are bootable, how many memories configured, and when it can be used. How PCI Express and PCI expansion slots are configured, how SATA and USB ports are configured, motherboard power management features. So all those are set up in the BIOS and more. You can also decide to speed up your processor by clocking it. You know, some people say they overclock, or you can slow it down by removing some of the speed, the clock speed there, you know. The motherboard manufacturer saved the motherboard BIOS settings in a listen to this guys, complementary metal oxide semiconductor, short CMOS, CMOS, and it's a memory chip. It's the same thing that we call the BIOS. All right? Okay, class, understand? Hello?
Sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
You have to let me know that they are here. All right. When a computer boots, the BIOS software reads the configured settings stored in CMOS. All right. To determine how to configure the hardware. All right. The BIOS settings are retained by CMOS using a battery. So the battery is displayed right here at RTS2232 or one of those battery, you know, CR2032, something like that. All right. So when that you might be saying, boy, oh, you can't believe say your computer uses battery. Yes, it does. The motherboard uses a battery. If this battery is done, you'll find that the CMOS information will be lost. Not lost as in gone, but if you make any updates to it, different from what comes with it, then it will go back to factory settings. Because remember, you understand me? If you make any changes different from what comes with it, it will go back to factory setting. Even the time will change. So one way to know if your CMOS battery is dead, or one way that tells you that your CMOS battery is dead, is it doesn't matter how many times you change the time on your computer, it goes back to some weird time. All right? Then you know your CMOS battery is dead. All right, if the battery fails, important settings can be lost. If the computer's time and date are incorrect, it could indicate that the CMOS battery is bad or is getting very low. So I just mentioned that. All right? So we talk about UFI, and earlier I said that UFI and CMOS can be interchanged, except UFI is the newer version. All right? And it comes with a Windows, a graphics interface. But let us read. Most computers today run Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, short UFI. UEFI, but we say UFI. Okay? All computers come with UFI, which provides additional features and addresses security issues with legacy BIOS. So the older version, when I use the word legacy, you're talking about the older version, which is BIOS. UFI can run on 32-bit and 64-bit systems. Supports larger boot drives. So we're talking about how UFI comes in and why it is even here. It supports larger boot drives because you know we are in the, I want to use the word dispensation of time where with our drives are so you can't even think of the size that they are going to make next. You're talking about 10 terabyte, 20 terabyte, and so forth, and so on. Back in the days, you're talking about 64 megabyte hard drive, 32 megabyte hard drive. I remember the time that I buy a 16 megabyte hard drive. I was like, oh, on top of the world. You get what I'm saying? A 16 megabyte hard drive. All right. So hard drive has come a long way. Secure boot features ensures your computer boots your specific operating system. So that's one feature that comes with UFI BIOS UFI, right? It's as I tell you, it supports larger boot drives and it includes additional features such as secure boot. And secure boot is way to ensure your computer boots to the specific operating system, and it helps to prevent rootkits. Rootkits are like viruses, programs that carries viruses from taking over your system. So it helps prevent rootkits from taking over your computer system. Secure boot. All right. So remember, in the old system, you used to have that says enable virus. They call it antivirus. And the older version, the BIOS, the CMOS BIOS used to use enable antivirus. All right. Now you talk about secure boot. All right. All right. So we should do a lab that you will investigate the BIOS or UFI settings. The thing about it is I don't have, let me look if I have a video. I don't have, we are not in the lab, so we wouldn't be able to do it. But I may have a video. Just give me a moment. I think I have a video. Just give me a second, class. Let me look for it. If I do still have it. Norbridge, no, not that. Just give me a moment, class. I'm looking. Should have this video. Okay, yes. All right, yes. So I have 3 videos for BIOS and UEFI. All right, and we're gonna look at them. All right. So the legacy BIOS supports some. That's a lab. We're gonna enter. Look at the video. So we just go through the screen. The legacy BIOS supports some security features to protect the BIOS settings. However, UEFI adds additional security features. So you want to say that UEFI comes with more security features than the legacy BIOS. And then in other words, it means that it is more secured. All right. Some common security features found in the BIOS or UEFI system include the passwords. Passwords allow for different levels of access, meaning you can set a password that as you turn on your computer, it asks you for your password. And that password is not the operating system Windows password. That is your BIOS or UEFI password. So as the computer comes on screen, the first thing you're going to see is enter password. You can't do nothing else. And guys, if you set your computer like that, yes, it is secure. And trust me, it is the height of security there. Because nobody, if you don't know the password, can get past there. You know, like you can't come in your house if you get locked and you have 10 bad dogs right at the gate, right? So, and that's what it is like. But what happens is if you forget that password, you know, you can be in trouble. All right. So drive encryption, that is what is also included. A hard drive can be encrypted to prevent data theft. And when it is encrypted, you have to remember encrypted, you just don't encrypt it and leave it like that. You encrypt it and leave it with a password. So if the person know of the password to decrypt the data, then God bless their soul and just steal a hard drive. Then all they need to do is format the hard drive and use it, but the data on it is of no use to them. All right. You have LoJack. This is a security feature that allows the owner to locate, lock, and delete the device. So you delete whatever information is on the device, you know, not delete the device because you can't delete a hard drive out of existence, you know, but you can delete the data that is on it. So it's LoJack. And I want you to pay attention to these features because they are critical features. You will see them in an exam. All right. Trusted Platform Module, that's TPM. This is a chip designed to secure hardware by storing encryption keys, digital certificates, passwords, and data. All right. And you have a secure boot now. Secure boot I will talk about. Secure boot is a UEFI security feature, and it's a standard that ensures that the computer only boots on OS that is trusted by the motherboard manufacturer. So these are features that are now built onto motherboards. So when the man create them, when ASUS, which is a motherboard manufacturer, create the motherboard, they built into it, they write into the program to say, listen, only these operating systems you must boot to. If any other operating system try to boot itself, don't happen. Just don't happen. You get what I say? You're not even going to tell you, say, oh, I can't boot it. It's gonna say, it's gonna don't happen. You understand me, class? Hello?
Yes, sir. Just go only work for the one that make feed, sir.
Only the one that is programmed inside of the memory that tells it that you can boot, these will be booted. The rest, it just never gonna happen. All right? So keep that in mind. All right. Update the firmware. So motherboard manufacturers may publish updated BIOS versions or UEFI version to provide enhancement to your system stability, you know, and ensure compatibility and performance. So you find that the motherboard might have been released in 2018, but a 2018 motherboard is still a new motherboard, you know, and you might purchase that motherboard in a server or your supercomputer or your desktop, any computer, it doesn't matter. And 2 years, 3 years now pass, And there are lots of updates and changes as it regarding to new expansion cards, new drivers. Windows 10 has upgraded and do many things, and likewise Linux and Mac OS, and you have new things come online, you know, new things come online. And so you need to update the motherboard BIOS for it to know all of these things here. So the motherboard manufacturers, they will from time to time publish updates, just like Windows publish Windows updates. Microsoft publish Windows updates, so that you can update your BIOS, all right, with those new information, so that your computer, your motherboard will perform efficiently on not only that, but will be compatible with newer services or hardware. Understand me, class? Hello?
Yes,
Guys,
sir.
you
Yes,
have
sir.
you have to let me know you're in class. Give me a thumbs up. Ask questions. Stop me. Ask me questions. All right. Early computer BIOS information was contained in RAM chips, and to upgrade the BIOS information, the RAM chips had to be physically replaced. We're talking about 1,000 years ago, guys. I mean, not literally, but I'm talking about long time, you know. In my time of computing, you know, when you want to upgrade your RAM, you have to buy a new RAM chip from off the market. And we're not talking about from the internet. We're talking, you have to find a store where you sell or you import it. Buy a RAM chip, use one chip remover, take out the one we have inside there and put in this one here. Modern time now, we don't have to do none of that. All right. Modern BIOS chips are electronically erasable, programmable, read-only memory. We talk about that in chapter 1, EEPROM. All right. So these modern chips can be programmed now. All right. But only electronically erasable, programmable, read-only chips. All right. And these can be upgraded by the user without opening the computer case. All right. So you basically just go to the manufacturer. As a matter of fact, you can do it from two ways. You can, the newer motherboards come with the software that operates within the operating system, like Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, right? And you can just open that software and it says upgrade BIOS, and it just download those updates and install it for you, restart the computer, and voila, everything work. The other sets, like the older version, you'd have to start up your computer in the lower stage in DOS, and you enter your BIOS or your UEFI, and you go to the option where it says BIOS update, and then you select update, and it will update the BIOS. All right. To download new BIOS, you consult your manufacturer's website and follow the recommended installation procedures. All right, class. When you're updating a BIOS, it is often called flashing your BIOS. Some people might say flash the RAM, ROM they're talking. Okay, class, are you with me? Do you understand what I just mentioned? Any question, let me know.
Yes, sir. I understand.
All right, I'm trying my best to make sure you get it clearly. So if you're not getting it clearly, let me know. I will go over it again. I have no issue. All right. We are going to go through those videos and we'll look at some of those. All right, so we don't have Windows 10 here, Lord. So we're at electrical power. Let us do the videos now. All right, let's give me a second. We're going to open these videos. All right, let's do this one first.
What is the BIOS?
All right, and so we share that screen. Share that, optimize and audio. Close. And can you see my screen? Can you see the screen, class? It's a dark screen. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
It's a
sir.
dark screen. All right, so I'm going to play the video now.
What is the BIOS, CMOS, and UEFI? So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, BIOS stands for Basic Input Output System. The BIOS is firmware that's built into the motherboard that initializes the computer's hardware as the computer is being booted. And then after it initializes the hardware, It then searches for a boot device, such as an optical drive or a storage drive, to boot software such as an operating system. So from the start, when you first turn on the computer does what's called a power on self-test or POST, which is run by the BIOS. It tests the computer to make sure all the requirements are met and if the hardware is working correctly before starting the operating system. If the computer passes the test, the internal speaker will make a short single beep, which indicates that the computer has passed the test and is booting up normally. However, if there are no beeps or multiple beeps, then that means that the computer has failed the test and something is wrong, and the computer needs further troubleshooting to find out what the problem is. So whether there are no beeps or multiple beeps, the computer will generate a beep code to help you pinpoint the problem. So for example, if the computer generates 3 long beeps, then that could indicate a keyboard error. Or if the computer generates a continuous short beep, then that could indicate a problem with a RAM module. So whatever BIOS is installed on the computer's motherboard, you can always refer to the manufacturer's documentation to find a list of beep codes and what they mean, so you can pinpoint the problem and correct it. The BIOS software is stored on the BIOS chip on the motherboard. The BIOS chip is non-volatile, which means that the contents of a chip are retained even after the power is turned off. But even after the computer is turned off, the computer does need to maintain certain settings, such as the date and time, the boot sequence, and certain hardware settings. In other words, the custom settings that you have configured in the BIOS. And these settings are stored on the motherboard in a special chip called a CMOS chip. But unlike the BIOS chip, which is non-volatile, the CMOS chip is volatile, meaning that it needs constant power to maintain its contents or settings. So in order for the CMOS to maintain its settings while the computer is turned off, it uses a battery. And this battery is called the CMOS battery. The CMOS battery is a small button cell battery which can be seen on the surface of the motherboard. And it's usually located on the bottom right-hand corner. And it's basically the same type of battery that is typically used in wristwatches. Now, as I stated before, the CMOS needs constant power that is supplied by the battery. But if the battery is removed and then reattached, the BIOS will reset back to its default settings from the manufacturer and erase any custom settings that you have configured. Now, a lot of people get confused about what's the difference between the BIOS and CMOS, and these terms are often used to refer to the same thing, but they are different. So just to clarify things, the BIOS is the actual firmware or program that comes with your motherboard, and that firmware is stored in the BIOS chip. But the settings that you actually make to the BIOS, such as the date and time, the boot sequence, fan speeds, and things like that, those settings are retained in the CMOS chip. Now, the CMOS chip is not necessarily its own chip. On modern motherboards, it's been integrated with the real-time clock that's part of the Southbridge chipset. Now, a new type of BIOS is called UEFI. UEFI stands for Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. Now, most, if not all, new motherboards are shipped with this newer type of BIOS. UEFI has several advantages over the old BIOS, and the first and most obvious, just by looking at it, is that it has a user-friendly graphical user interface that supports different colors and even animations, whereas the old BIOS has your typical blue screen that resembles the Windows blue screen of death. UEFI can also recognize larger storage drives, and you can even use a mouse in the UEFI interface, whereas compared to the old BIOS, where mouse support wasn't even available and you had to use your keyboard only. And UEFI also has a built-in feature called Secure Boot, and Secure Boot stops any digitally unsigned drivers from loading, and it also helps to stop malicious software such as rootkits.
All right, guys, I think that was a very nice detailed picture. It's a picture, I mean video. I think it is self-explanatory, but as again, if you have any questions at all, don't be afraid to ask. All right. We're going to look at the menu and then we're going to look at configuring. All right, just give me a moment. Let me.
Sir, one question.
Uh-huh.
The part where you say if you put in the password into the BIOS and forget it when you turn on the computer itself. So how do you get past that?
All right. One way to get past that, you have to remove the battery from the motherboard and wait a little while for the CMOS or the BIOS to be drained, for the CMOS to be drained. And yeah, that normally does. Or some motherboard, newer motherboards doesn't come with it right now because it's a security feature that sometimes people know about. Most people know about. Some motherboards come with a thing they call reset BIOS, where you take off the jumper, the BIOS, so you reset it to factory default. And when it's reset it to factory default, it means that the password will not be there. All right, so those work. All right, but if in a case where that motherboard don't have those features, then yeah, chances are you need a new motherboard. All right, if it don't come with those features. So one of the best things to do is write down the password. All right, can you see the screen, class? Can I see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And class, listen, who just asked a question, by the way? Who asked a question just now? Was that Rowan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Rowan, may I tell you, say your son, you sure you don't have a father named Rowan Dixon?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So, the thing is, if you want to do that, it's not a problem. It is very good. So I don't feel scared, even though you say, boy, if you lost the password, just write down the password. Worse if you have your computer where you don't want people to trouble it and you put them in a place where you'd rather for nobody to trouble it than somebody to trouble it at all and cause problems. Those features does work. All right. Let's go into this video.
Have you ever heard about the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface? Maybe not.
Oh, yeah.
But I bet you have heard of a UEFI BIOS. Well, UEFI stands for Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. We're going to kick it off here and investigate the UEFI BIOS. I'll do the investigating and you'll get the tour. Let's begin. So my computer here has just booted into the UEFI BIOS. Every computer is a little bit different and may require different keystrokes in order to access the BIOS. For example, my computer required me to press the delete key after I first turned it on. So here we are. This is a real BIOS, not a simulated BIOS. In the top left corner, you can see my motherboard's model number, awesome, and my CPU temperature. Right below that, you can even see my motherboard temperature. In the middle here, we can actually see our system time and date. Right below that, we can see the current firmware of my UEFI BIOS. What I really enjoy, though, is in the top right corner of the screen where you see these listed items here in the top. Here you can view my current CPU, which has 4 CPU cores and 6 GPU cores. You can view the operating frequency for both my CPU and my RAM. You can also see the total size of the RAM that I have installed in my system. Now remember, this is the UEFI BIOS. What that means is I have a graphical user interface that includes keyboard and mouse support. This is very different from what we've seen with legacy BIOS. To further demonstrate this, look at this horizontal bar right below my system time and date and my CPU and RAM. From left to right, this is my boot order of my computer. What's even more awesome is the fact that I can drag and drop these items anywhere. We will focus on configuration of this, though, in another video. So let's take a quick look inside the UEFI BIOS. Let's start by investigating the left side of the screen. Here we will find that we have an area for motherboard settings, overclocking our system for faster performance, and an area called mFlash, which allows us to flash our system with an updated UEFI BIOS. Now on the right side of the screen, we have a section where we can choose different overclocking profiles. We can pre-build these for the right gaming or video editing occasion. Down below that, we have a hardware monitor where we can check out the power usage and cooling. We can even have customized fan speeds and even view graphs here. And lastly, we can visit the Board Explorer. The Board Explorer is awesome because this allows us to have a beautiful and interactive view of what's actually attached to our motherboard. So it's time for the deeper look. So first, we'll head over to Settings. In Settings, we can look at System Settings, which I can either click on with a mouse or click the Enter key. And inside of here, we see time and date, as well as in text, what's connected to my motherboard and the firmware version. We next are going to have the Advanced area. In the Advanced area, we can do a lot of fine-tuning and control of both the peripherals and the power settings of our motherboard. Another item we can customize is going to be the boot settings. So I'll head back out and go to boot. This is extremely important. This allows us to customize the boot order of our system, both using device preference and security settings known as Secure Boot. We'll take a look at that later on. If we go into the security settings though, we can take a look here and see that we have the ability to set an administrator password. This will prevent other people from accessing and modifying our UEFI BIOS settings. Now let's get out of the settings area and let's go all the way over and see overclock. We'll take a quick look at the overclock settings and you can see all the customizations possible here. This allows you to fine-tune your machine for the performance that you desire. But this may cause some extra wear and tear in your system due to increased heat. Next, we will have the mFlash section. This is where you can utilize tools in order to flash your UEFI BIOS with the latest firmware. This is commonly done with a USB key or flash drive plugged in. Not too much. Heading to the right side, we'll go over to our overclocking profiles. This is where we can pick what overclocking profile to use that we have pre-built and saved for a given situation. This should be good for gaming or video editing, or maybe even normal computing use. Last two sections. We'll take a trip into the hardware monitor. Here we can look at the CPU fan speed, temperature, as well as case fan speeds. Some UEFI will even allow you to set an average temperature you'd like your system to stay at, and your cooling fans will react accordingly to do their best to keep your system as close to that target temperature as possible. Love it. We'll back up and take a look at that Board Explorer. I click on the Board Explorer. This is great. In the Board Explorer, you can get a graphical view of your motherboard. The highlighted sections allow you to hover your mouse over them and read a description of what is connected to that component. For example, if I were to take my mouse cursor and I can hover over the RAM slot where my memory is, I can actually see information regarding it. You can see that each RAM slot has a 4 gig memory chip installed. Also, if I hover over my SATA ports, we'll get information on what is connected to that individual SATA port. You can see that I have 2 SATA devices attached. One of these is my device here, and the other one is Blu-ray disc DVD-ROM drive. This is a great UEFI tool to visually see how the motherboard is arranged and what is connected to your machine without even opening the case. So if you have time to take, get into your BIOS and view your settings and learn how you
All right, class, tell me that you learned some stuff. So we understand that the UEFI, it's graphical. You can use your mouse and your keyboard. You have a graphical representation of your hardware settings inside your computer. You know, you have a feel like you can point and click. You know, it's like a dashboard, put it that kind of way. You understand? So you can see, for instance, the overclocking settings here for your CPU. You understand? And you can see whatever you can see right up here. You can see the frequency, the speed, how many cores. It tells us so many things that is happening as it relates to your motherboard. And you have to remember more, your motherboard is like the foundation, the fundamental of your whole system, because everything is connected there, you know. So without the motherboard, even the CPU can't do nothing. So as much as people say, oh, the CPU is the brain of the computer, yes, but the brain can't function off of itself. So, you know, the UFI shows you all that is happening in your system, the hardware in your system. So you have to just love it. You understand? You just have to love it. You know, just because of I mean, I must say, I am old school also. I've been around more than 1,000 years ago. That's how long I've been around. And I can tell you that we appreciate any numbers, any information that the BIOS was giving, the original BIOS was giving us, the legacy BIOS. We could see the temperature just the same. We could see the overclocking speed and so on. But the thing is that it would not be getting it in a graphical representation where the regular layperson can see it and understand it. Before, you'd have to read and understand everything that is there. So, you know, this information was there, but it was never represented this kind of way. All right. So this representation is great, plus the additional features that are Right. All right. Guess I'm almost online.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. You can hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And a little bit of struggle, but we will continue. That's what happens with technology sometimes, even though we love it so much. All right. So at least we didn't run out of kerosene. For those who know about kerosene. All right. So we're gonna do a next video, which is this one. Okay.
There, we are back in the UEFI BIOS, and this time we're here to change some settings. In this video, we get to configure.
All right, so we're going to do configuration of the UEFI. Before the video before, we just look at the settings and they were explained. Now we are going to do some configuration of the UEFI settings. All right, so let me share and start the video. Video, optimize, and audio. All right. Share. Share. Wow. Why is this not sharing? Just give me a sec, class. It's coming up, huh? Can I see my screen, class? You're not seeing my screen, are you?
No, sir.
I'm not seeing it.
Okay. Let's try share again. Continue. Share. Still not sharing content. Wow. Okay, just give me a second. Let me get this going. Share content. So it's not sharing. What I might have to do, I might upload the meeting, and I'm going to pass the host on to someone else. And as soon as I get back in, you just, I'm going to pass the host on to, who is this person? Rowan Dixon. All right. And I'm going to upload just to check to see what's going on. Then I will come back in and take back the presenter, the host option. All right. Host. Just give me a second. Well, I'll have to give it back a little time. I don't see why I'm not sharing the content at all. Just give me a moment. Okay, can you make me the host now? Yeah, you are the host, Ron.
Okay, you can tell me how to switch it back now?
Okay, yeah, so there are 3 dots at the top right hand corner of my square. You click on it, more options, and you select make presenter.
Say that again.
There are 3 dots at the top right hand corner of my square where my name is. All right, so you click on those 3 dots.
Okay, I
You
make
say
you the
make presenter.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And reclaim host. Oh, it's asking me for a host key that I don't have. How comes I didn't save that host key? Okay. Well, since I'm the presenter, I'll continue being the presenter. Share. All right. All right, are we ready? Can I see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, ensure meeting is being recorded. Just a moment. Okay, recording in progress. Cool. All right, so let's start. We are gonna configure the UFI.
There, we are back in the UEFI BIOS, and this time we're here to change some settings.
Can you hear?
Here, the UEFI BIOS, and we're
Yes.
going to explore the following items.
A little bit low.
Set up our boot options.
It's slow?
Customize our security settings.
Okay.
Tailor in some interface configurations, and even use the firmware backup and update.
All right, let me stop.
Here are boot options. Now you think we jump straight into
Give me a
those
second.
settings, but technically we don't even have to go there. On the main
All right, let's do it. Let's start it again. Okay, optimize audio out and share. All right, so we start again. There we go.
Hello there, we are back in the UEFI BIOS, and this time we're here to change some settings. In this video, we get to configure the UEFI BIOS, and we are going to explore the following items. We will set up our boot options, customize our security settings, take part in some interface configurations, and even use the firmware backup and update tool. So let's begin. We want to configure our boot options. Now you'd think we'd jump straight into motherboard settings and hit boot, but technically we don't even have to go there. On the main UEFI BIOS screen, I can quickly and easily see my boot order listed in this horizontal toolbar. Now this is awesome because if I want my optical drive to be given more preference than something else, I can just click and drag that optical drive to the front of the list. And now it's being given the first boot order preference, such as the optical drive would be booted from before the hard disk drive or USB or anything else. This is great. Now this feature does depend on your motherboard and UEFI firmware, so let's take a look at the official method as well. We'll go into settings, and then I can go ahead and click on boot. And inside of here, we'll see this massive list. Now before we just dive into this list, I'd like to take note of the boot mode select. With boot mode select here, I see that the default option is legacy and UEFI. It has been predicted that in the next couple of years, legacy will no longer exist. It is here at this time to allow our board to be backward compatible with devices that require legacy BIOS settings. If you'd like to, you can select the option and you'd actually be able to click UEFI only, as long as you know your devices will still be supported. Let's continue. So, current boot option is set as my optical drive, the UEFI CD DVD. That's from our previous drag and drop maneuver. To modify this list, you can just click on any one of these items, such as, for example, boot option 1, and I can choose what device will be booted first. For example, how about my USB key? There we go. And now that's first. You see that horizontal list from left to right has changed up above. We can also go and click on any one of these items and use the plus or minus arrows to move them up or down on the list as well. I personally like the drag and drop option we saw previously. Next, it's time to take a look at some security settings. Back to motherboard settings and then into security. We can find some important settings that we can configure. Here in the security settings, let's take a look at the passwords. The administrator password can be set to prevent other people from accessing and changing your BIOS settings. I'll click enter, and we're going to make this thing, there's already a password on it. If it was Cisco, we're going to make it Cisco again. Create new password, Cisco. Confirm new password, Cisco. And now our administrator password is Cisco. If you want to change and save our BIOS, you're going to need that password of Cisco to do it. Now the user password down below, this is special. This can be set in order to prevent the operating system from loading on your machine until a user has entered the correct user password stored here in BIOS. Further, there's this feature called UKey. The UKey feature allows the BIOS administrator to dedicate a password to a specific USB key or flash drive. The USB key or flash drive will be needed to be plugged into your machine when a user wants to access the operating system of the machine. Wow. Never knew a USB flash drive could be so important. Let's continue on and take a look at some of the configuration settings. In the main settings area, we're going to go into advanced. Inside of advanced, we're going to access the integrated peripherals. Within the integrated peripherals, we're going to find a good amount of settings to control. In this section, we have the ability to control the onboard LAN controller. This is our physical network card device. We can actually disable it here if we don't want to use it. We take a look at Wi-Fi and Bluetooth controller. We can also control Wi-Fi and Bluetooth components are allowed to be used on the computer. Think of this as using software to disable individual hardware components on the physical computer before the operating system even got a chance to use it. This is awesome. We can even make changes to how the SATA hard drives are going to be viewed. For example, I can click enter on SATA mode. We can have these SATA hard drives in the legacy IDE mode, current AHCI mode, or even by utilizing RAID. On top of all that, down below, we can customize that the SATA connections are allowed to be hot swappable as well. Let's back up a little bit and take a look at some USB configuration. In settings, advanced, USB configs, we want to take a look here and see that we can actually control both legacy USB support as well as disabling or enabling the USB controller itself. With this coming into mind, I want you to imagine this machine being in a high risk or high profile environment, and you have to be the IT professional that is concerned about people bringing in external USB flash drives. Problem identified and problem solved. Let's take a step back. Now what we want to take a look at is our Windows configuration. Right here in the Windows configuration, we can control how quickly our machine will boot. We can do this by activating Fast Boot or by activating MSI Fast Boot. These will allow your systems to come online more quickly by skipping some of the more thorough post-verification tests. Next, we want to talk about what makes our machine boot in the morning, and that's our wake up event settings. We can click on this item to control what is allowed to wake up our computer and turn it on. There's a couple here, not too many. We have one last section to cover in this video, and we're going to go all the way back, and we're going to head over to MFlash. MFlash is all about firmware updates for our UEFI BIOS. We will have the ability to save our current BIOS to a USB flash drive that's plugged in. This will allow us to restore it at a later date. We also have the ability to update the BIOS using this tool. So for example, I can click Save BIOS to Storage. And there is my disk, which I can click on. Leave the default. And it's saving it to my USB flash drive. By using the Update BIOS feature, we can load a BIOS file that is on a USB flash drive that is plugged into our machine. Now this is going to be awesome because this is your storing and recovery, especially when you have settings that you're concerned about losing and not having in the future. We can use the Update BIOS feature to actually select a file off of a USB thumb drive. And here, if I had a BIOS ready to go, I can click on the UEFI flash thumb drive and be able to update the BIOS itself. Now, while every UEFI BIOS will be a little bit different, you should have a much better understanding of how to configure some of the important.
Okay, class. I think this is these videos are good videos, detail, give you a feeling of hands-on, and I hope you guys listen to it. Some stuff I will make sure these videos are posted on YouTube. I will try to get a tiny URL set up and send the link also. All right. Try and do as much as I can. You guys need to go through the chapter and the videos, and then we'll move. So that's it for BIOS and UEFI. All right. Move now further into chapter 3. We have 15 more minutes. I'm giving back the time that the current took from us. So it's going to be giving 15 more minutes. So we'll continue in the chapter. All right. Let me share. I can't even reclaim the host. I don't even know Okay, so let's begin. And we're going to work on electrical power. Here we go. Chapter 3, section 2. We talk about wattage and voltage. Well, most persons don't even have a clue or understanding of current, the wattage and voltages, and the importance of it regarding the components on our computer. They only use the computer and so forth. Where this course ensure that it is integrated here into the topic so that we can have an understanding, and an appreciation for wattage and voltage as it concerns your computer and the operation of your components. For those who are already inclined to electricity or electrical terms, you will not have any issues. For those, you will have to read some more. For those who don't, we'll have to read some more to get your basic understanding up. All right, so things to know. There are 4 basic units of electricity that a computer technician must know. And here they are. You must know about voltage because you will have to use a voltmeter if you want to be a technician. And the voltage is measures in volt, the measure of work required to move, a charge. All right, so that's what a volt is. It's the measure of work required to move a charge. It's called a volt. All right, and the representation symbol is V. Current, and it's represented by I. All right, and it is measured in amperes. All right, the measure of the amount of electrons moving through a circuit per second. All right, so you will talk about amperes when you talk about 5 amps, 1 amp, 0.5 amps. You know, in our first chapter, I spoke about the power requirements for the computers, and we talk about our laptop adapter. And if we look on it, you will notice it comes and it tells you a specific amount of voltage. It might say 19 volts, and you will see it says 0.1 ampere or 1.5 ampere. You don't want to go over those settings at all. It will damage your computer, or it may don't work at all. So that's why it's important we understand at least the information here. When you talk about resistance, and that is measured in ohms, all right, and represented by the letter O. All right, ohms represented by the letter O, and resistance, that's for you're talking about the formula, electrical formula, you'll see the representation in R. So ohms, it refers to the opposition. The resistance represented the opposition to the flow of current. So current is flowing in one direction, and the resistance is referring to the opposition to the flow of current. You understand? The push against current. You understand? And then you talk about power. All right? Power is represented with the letter P and is measured in watts. And watts is represented with the letter W, the measure of work required to move electrons through a circuit. All right, and it's multiplied by the number of electrons going through the circuit per second. We're going to stick with the first part here. You know, it's the amount of work required to move electrons through the circuit. All right, times the amount of electrons going through the circuit per second. I know that sounds like a lot to swallow, but just remember, your watt is the amount of work. You understand? Just keep that in your head. All right. Now, a basic equation known as Ohm's law, and this is important, class. This is exam important, so yeah, that's why I say a basic equation known as Ohm's law express how voltage is equal to the current multiplied by the resistance. Now I'm going to explain it to you now. Ohm's law, the man named Ohm, he make up this law, yeah, can figure out say it work, and it can, and whatever him see happen, when him check it out, it equal to the same, so him call it in on a law, Ohm's law, you know, and him say it express how voltage is equal, so that's how V for voltage is equal to current, which is I, multiplied by the resistance, which is R. So that's how them get voltage. So voltage, them get voltage when you multiply current by the resistance. So I'm giving it to you in pure plain language. You understand? So that's how you find out voltage. When you multiply current by resistance. You understand? The voltage, you multiply it, the current by the resistance. And remember now, the current is the amount of electrons moving through the circuit per second. And the resistance is the opposition to the amount of current moving in the circuit. You multiply them two there when you like them one another together, and you get the volt. Class, do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
I
sir.
feel like me alone a while ago. So you just remember now, when current go about in business, right? It encounter resistance. You get what I say? And when you multiply current and an enemy, which is resistance, you get volt. That is the best me can give it to you. You understand? So volt is current multiplied by an enemy or in opposition. And you get, so it's volt equal IR, current times resistance. Current multiplied by the opposition of current, resistance, all right? In an electrical system, power is equal to the voltage multiplied by current. Now, when we talk about power, we just say power is measured in watts. Keep that in mind. Power is measured in watts. Okay? And we just say power equal the volt multiplied by the current. Class, are you with me?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if questions, ask me, please. All right? So in an electrical system, the power is equal to the voltage multiplied by the current. All right? So remember now, voltage, you get voltage by multiplying current with the resistance. But you get power by multiplying voltage, which is resistance time, with current. Let me not say up. Power is the voltage times current. Don't forget. All right. We're going to go some more. We're going to look at it different. So you basically say watt to work out watt, which is WATTS. It is V times I. So you can say V, you can say W equal VI. P equal VI. Remember that power is measured in watts. All right. Now, on the back of some power supply is a small switch called the voltage selector. All right. Voltage selector. Remember now, voltage is as a result of current multiplied by the opposition, which is resistance. All right. That is voltage. All right. The switch sets the input voltage to the power supply to either 110, 115, 220, or 230. In Jamaica, we use both systems, but most of our power outlets are, tell me what number is it, what voltage?
110 and 115.
Correct. Most of our outlets in our homes are 110 and 115. Most of our homes was installed by somebody after a 220 or 230 volt, and you use those for your washing machine or some other power usage electrical equipment. All right. A power supply with this switch is called a dual voltage power supply. So this power supply can use on 2 different volts. All right. It can use on 110, 115 or 220, 230. All right. If a power supply does not have this switch, it automatically detects and set the correct voltage. Not all of them, by the way. You understand? The correct voltage setting is determined by the country where the power supply is used. All right. So if you buy a power supply out of England and it don't have a switch on it to move it around, it's going to come to use 220, 230. Chances are it's just not going to work in your 110 outlet. Even though it says it will switch it, not all the time it works, because I've seen that where they don't work. Okay, class? So it's important to look at the setting and you ensure you're going to put it in a regular outlet, you put it at the volt that is appropriate. All right, so we're going to get some research on these electrical formulas and so forth. All right, so power fluctuation. We're going until 8:40 because, you know, as I said, we're giving back the time that, even though it's not our fault, but we're just going to take another 5 minutes rather. Power fluctuation and protection. All right, so we just encounter power fluctuation just not too long ago with our electricity went out, and there are times when we don't, electricity stays on, but we have a fluctuation where the current dims, and there are times when we don't even know that it happens, and you have something that they call a brownout. All right, so how do we protect against those and identify them? Let's go through it. When the voltage in a computer is not accurate or study, the computer components might not operate correctly. Definitely will not, and it will not operate optimally either. Some computers will not even operate. All right. The following types of AC power fluctuation can cause data loss or hardware failure. And when I talk about data loss, we talk hard drive can just stop work. You understand? Because of the power. Now, I'll give you an example. Your hard drive, right? The slowest one on the market right now spins at 7,200 revolution per second, per minute. Sorry. All right. 7200 RPM. You get me? And what you find is that at that high speed of spinning, right? If you have a jolt or electricity just leave your computer just like that, like it did just now, chances are whatever you were doing will be lost. And the next most unfortunate thing can also happen where that you can lose your hard drive or some other component in a computer. How we deal with that? We soon get there. So you have blackout, which we just have complete loss of AC power. We just have that blackout. Brownout, it's reduced voltage of AC power that lasts for a period of time. So the current not going, it's just that the voltage reduce. Sometimes we don't even know it. Then you have noise, interference from generators and lightning. You understand? So you have you have in an environment where you have generators and so forth, this noise can fluctuate the cycle of the AC current and causes issues. And lightning also can, we know lightning will interrupt the flow of the electricity, the cycle, and causes also a problem. And then you have spike. It's some increase in voltage that lasts for a short period of time. They call it an electrical spike. And that also is very dangerous.
Okay, guys, as you see what's going on, I have to call it a night. Want to take care of themselves until next week.
Alright.